Up to that point in time, in India, this thing we call yoga was taught by primarily upper caste men to other upper caste men, but its message said that the divine is in everyone, that it exists in every particle of everything, that all arises from the same source, and where could this light go but into everything that was created? So there was a conflict between what yoga taught and how it was taught. It was restricted to temples for high caste people, and yet it talked about the universality of love and truth and wisdom, and that it didn't belong to anyone, and in fact was everywhere. So the Bhaktis took it out of the temples and into the streets, and they said, you don't have to study Sanskrit or scriptures or engage in arcane practices. That if the message was love, then you should cultivate it. That joy itself was contagious, and that if you engaged in practices that brought joy to you in your own heart, then it would bring joy to the world. Singing in this way was reinterpreted as a kind of radical act and a broad kind of democratic thing. So they brought simple mantras out of the temples and into the streets and taught them to people who couldn't read or write or knew anything about this. And many of the first Bhaktis were female. They learned from their husbands, but they weren't invested in the system of patriarchy that insisted on a particular dominant structure. They took the word seriously and said, okay, yoga, love, light is in everyone, so let's share it with everyone. And they went out into the streets and taught people these mantras and made up what were in effect little pop songs that people could remember and repeat. And they went around, in effect, proclaiming, I am God. Now, in America, you either will be branded as like crazy, probably, or people will look at you strangely, because usually the retort is like, well, who do you think you are, God? And if you go, yup, people will be like, whoa, man, you've got an ego problem. You know? It's like, why an ego problem is to say that you aren't connected to it. An ego problem is to say that you are somehow disconnected from this source. I have the same problem. We all have the same problem. These practices of things like meditation and especially singing are means of remembering. Music is what actually produces culture. It's funny and we forget this, but people who can sing together, breathe together, think together, and there is a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate, which is actually in the forward part of your frontal lobe, but it is associated with compassion. Singing stimulates this part of your brain. It brings on compassion. It doesn't matter what you've read or what you've done. When you sing, you feel closer to the people around you. This is useful and essential. It could be that early humans didn't sing together. The ones who did it, they died. They didn't know how to work together. They didn't know how to unite around common purpose. The ones who could, did, and we are their descendants. We are inherently musical. Kirtan asserts this. It says that singing, as opposed to being something extra, is something necessary. It is something necessary to bring us together and to help us feel compassion for one another, which is a difficult maneuver, you know, as any afternoon in traffic will prove to you. So, I suggest the best cure for road rage might just be kirtan, okay? Just put on the CD in your car and sing as loud as you want to, okay? There is a simple neurological mechanism that is involved here, and it's not ideological. We're going to sing some mantras that arise from the culture of Hinduism, but they are not themselves Hindu. As I said, Kabir, one of the Bhakti poets, didn't see any distinction between Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Zoroastrian. It was like he just saw human. So whatever your practice is, it doesn't matter whether you sing in Latin or Hebrew or Sanskrit, it's the same experience. But what happens with a kirtan is we'll sing call and response, we'll sing out a phrase, and then you sing it back, and it starts slowly, and then it just keeps repeating, and it speeds up. What this does is really important neurologically. The first thing is people start breathing together, which is itself an unusual act. I'll give you a little practice that I try to employ in difficult situations. But if you can't agree with somebody, just notice how they're breathing and match their rate of breathing. Just breathe the way they're breathing. Once you are in sync with them, you can shift their breathing. They won't notice that you're doing it. But if you start to slow your own breathing down, they will follow you. And it creates a feeling of calm. That's where you want to get. And that's where we want to get. So we start in singing by causing everybody to breathe at the same time. You're all going to sing a line, so it all happens, okay? And in a short period of time, we come into a kind of agreement. What breathing deeply does is it activates part of your autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. It's your relaxation response. And that makes you chill out. Everybody knows, if people are anxious, you just say, hey, take a breath. You don't have to know anything about yoga to understand that works. So, first we activate everybody's parasympathetic nervous system and we chill everybody out, okay? And we bring in people into a place of agreement. Then we repeat and we speed up. This stimulates your sympathetic nervous system, your excitation response. Normally, these things work in parallel, okay? You get excited and then it's just too much, so then you have to chill out. And then it's boring, and then you need stimulation, and so then you get all worked up again, and then it's too much, and our days go from up to down on this crazy roller coaster ride. What singing does, interestingly, is it stimulates them both simultaneously to fire. So you're relaxed and present and aware at the same time. So the original Bhaktis didn't know anything about neuroscience, but they came up with a practice that expertly used it. We're going to sing a mantra that goes like this: Devaki Nandana Gopala.
Devaki Nandana Gopala.
Deva means bright and shining. And Nandana means like one who comes from. One who comes from what is bright and shining. What I love about yoga is that it's a means of investigation. It's a way of asking questions. Not a system of answers or beliefs. It's a way of entering into the world going, really? Really? Wow. Wow. Science now says that the world begins in a flash of brilliant light. Something comes out of nothing. And all of a sudden there's a world, and it's full of you and me and grass and stars and clouds and ripe peaches, purring little kitties and all kinds of stuff. That brilliance is in everything that came from it. So Deva, bright and shining, Nandana, one who comes from, that's you and the person next to you. And it's really, really, really the work of all of this is just to see yourself as an image of the divine, and then turn to the person next to you and also see them in all of their beautiful imperfection as exactly the same thing. And if you can't get there at first, then sing louder. That's all that's necessary. The words Gopala and Govinda refer to this scary word Krishna, that, like some people, I guess because God love them, the Hare Krishna movement convinced everybody that if you sang a Sanskrit mantra, you were gonna definitely end up in a cult and giving all your money away. You know? And some people did, but hey, Christianity's full of the same. So, you know, there's traps all over the place. But here's the thing. Krishna is an image of the divine in human form. It's a beautiful metaphor that in fact, like all that is bright and shining and beautiful and loving exists in you, not some God out there, up there in some heaven that no one has found yet. The last I checked, the edge of the known universe is like 20 billion light years away or something, some completely ridiculous far out figure. So if there's a heaven to be found, I suggest you look closer. Like in your own heart, in your own breath, in your own feeling, in your own joy, in your own wonder. Govinda and Gopala are ways of saying the knower of the senses and the mind, the witness of all of this. Can you just witness yourself without trying to fix it? Can you just witness others without trying to fix them? Can you love everybody else in their messy, beautiful process? Can you love yourself in your own messy, beautiful process? That's what this mantra is challenging us to do. So we're going to sing in a call and response fashion, Devaki Nandana Gopala,
Devaki Nandana Gopala,
Devaki Nandana Gopala,
Devaki Nandana Gopala,
Gopala, Govinda, Govinda Gopala.
Gopala, Govinda, Govinda.
It repeats so you get Gopala, Govinda, Govinda Gopala.
Gopala, Govinda, Govinda, Gopala.
Right, you'll get it. You'll get it. And here's the thing. I encourage you to sing boldly, loudly, and as out of tune as you want. Okay? Because for those of you who are blessed with perfect voices, this is an exercise in compassion for you. Next to you. Okay? And for those of you who have horrible voices, this is an act of like bold courage. Of just saying, this is me in all of my messiness and all of my imperfections. Deal with it. Okay? But the funny thing is that when people sing together, the interesting thing is the people who are in tune eventually bring the people who are out of tune into tune with them. There's something magical about that. So if you start out singing out of tune, I guarantee that by the end of it, you'll actually be singing better, so don't worry about it.